you for joining us. Your support today will help MOCSA continue providing free services to survivors. Your support today will make sure someone is there to answer the crisis line 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Your support today will ensure survivors aren't alone at the hospital or in court. Your support today will ensure that teens throughout the metro are learning about consent and healthy relationships. I support MOCSA because it improves lives and helps victims become survivors.
Hi, my name is Emily Voss, and I'm an advocacy and outreach specialist here at MOCSA. Kansas City needs MOCSA because countless times clients have asked me, does MOCSA exist anywhere else? And that's because they might be going to move to flee violence, or they've called us from outside of our service area. And unfortunately, every time I have to say, no, we do not exist anywhere else, but I can refer you to a similar organization. That's the impact MOCSA makes.
I believe one of the many ways MOCSA is helping make our community better is through its prevention programs in our area schools.
I support MOCSA for the great advocacy they provide to our patients who have been sexually assaulted. St. Luke's Hospital was the first private sexual assault center in the country, and MOCSA, along with law enforcement, has been our partner since the beginning in 1974. When our sexual assault nurse examiners are called out to see a patient, they know MOCSA will respond, and they will respond with highly qualified, patient-centered, and compassionate advocates who will follow that patient long after they've left the ED. Thank you, MOCSA, for taking care of our patients and taking care of the community.
It's been an honor to co-chair the luncheon with my friend Nola Adebo, even though it didn't go quite as we planned.
We're glad you're all here to join us in support of the incredible work MOCSA does in the Kansas City community. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Kristen Wing and Jamie putting in a plug for MOCSA. Thank you so much for supporting us, supporting our survivors, supporting everybody on our staff who've just worked so hard during the pandemic. And Jamie's just thrilled to say, congratulations, MOCSA.
My name is Hani Wolk, and as a member of the counseling department, my hope is that all survivors of sexual assault and violence have access to free therapeutic services. My message to survivors is that you have a place here at MOCSA. You have a place here where you have the opportunity to heal and to thrive, and that there are people here to help support you along that journey. Thank you for being here today and for supporting MOCSA's mission to improve the lives of those affected by sexual assault and violence and to prevent that violence in our communities.
Si has sido afectada por una agresión sexual, no estás solo. MOCSA está aquí para apoyarte y nosotros sí te creemos.
Kansas City needs MOCSA because kids need to know that they are in charge of their own bodies. I'm there to teach them to say no, get away, and tell someone.
Hello, I'm Peggy Dunn, and as Mayor of Leawood, I, along with my Leawood Police Department, am very proud to support the good work of MOCSA. We truly believe in the important mission, and that is very positive impact on people's lives that have been affected by sexual abuse and assault. Whether it's answering the crisis hotline, offering free counseling services, or education for our vulnerable youth. It's all very important. So at this community luncheon, I want to congratulate and offer my sincere appreciation to the professional staff and all of the volunteers and all of the donors and all of you for helping them have such a successful, important impact in our community. Thank you very much.
Hi, Julie Donelon, President and CEO of MOCSA here. Thank you all for tuning in with us today for MOCSA's annual community luncheon. We are so grateful for your support. Today with me are three of my inspirations for supporting MOCSA. I am grateful for them and want to make sure that we have a community that is free from sexual abuse and assault so that nobody ever has to be a victim of sexual violence.
I think MOCSA is really important to me because I know I'm really lucky to have an Aunt Julie that supports us and helps us no matter what, but I know a lot of kids out there don't. So I think it's really important that MOCSA can help those children who don't have a lot of people to help them.
Sammy, how about you?
I think MOCSA helps a bunch of people because there is a bunch of people that are emotionally hurt and physically hurt.
Luca?
It helps kids like me be safe.
Thanks again for being here today, and thank you for your support.
My hope for survivors, male survivors, is that they know that MOCSA is a safe place where they can be seen, heard, and believed.
Hi, my name is Jorge Andres Basada Carrington. I'm a bilingual advocate at MOCSA. On average, we get up to 100 phone calls per week through our 24-hour crisis line. Additionally, 550 people have visited local hospitals in 2020 to get forensic exams. My team and myself are all there during those difficult phone calls and those lengthy and difficult processes in the hospitals. Survivors deserve justice, and perpetrators deserve to be held accountable. I am here to advocate for survivors. My message to survivors is that you should never give up, and that there is always going to be a warm, listening ear and help on the other side of our line. So give us a call if you ever need it.
Kansas City needs MOCSA because we must stop sexual abuse and assault from happening. One of the reasons why I love working at MOCSA is because we have services that help us to prevent sexual violence, like advocacy, education, and counseling services. Sexual violence is preventable. and we all have a role and a part to play in making our community safe and free from violence. Thanks for being here today and your support of MOCSA.
Hi, I'm Jared Campbell.
I'm Katie Campbell.
We are co-chairing the Community Engagement Committee this year for MOCSA's annual luncheon. And I have to say, we are just so thrilled to be a part of this great event and this great organization. We have known about MOCSA for many years as community volunteers and as patrons, and it's always been an honor to go to the luncheon, and to be able to be even more involved this year is just a great special opportunity for us. And so thank you for being a part of today, for making today so special.
And as an educator, I am grateful for what MOCSA does for our teens in the Metro. MOCSA provides education for teens so they know what a healthy relationship looks like. And you are a part of that. So thank you for all you do to support MOCSA.
Hi there, I'm Janae Roberts.
And I'm JP Roberts. And we are thrilled to be with you all today and to be serving as community support co-chairs for the 27th Annual Community Luncheon to help raise awareness and critical funding for an important cause.
JP and I know that MOCSA is a vital organization in the Kansas City community. From the 24-hour crisis line to the hospital advocacy services, the programs and services that MOCSA provides to survivors of sexual assault are critical.
So thank you for being with us today. With your support, we can ensure all of MOCSA's services remain completely free of charge for every person who needs them.
Hello, I'm Josh Rowland. I'm the chair of the board of directors of MOCSA. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's community luncheon. It's also a pleasure to thank you for being a stakeholder in this fight for Kansas City, a stakeholder in a fight for healing, for justice, for even the recognition of the voices of our clients and the people that we educate every day in schools across the city. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being committed to making Kansas City a better, safer place for all of us. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Rowland, board chair of MOCSA, the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault.
And I'm Julie Donelon, president and CEO of MOCSA. We're so glad you could join us today for MOCSA's 27th Annual Community Luncheon. We hope that by next year we can be together again in that beautiful ballroom downtown at the Marriott, sharing this event in person. As the only rape crisis center in the Kansas City metropolitan area, MOCSA's mission is to improve the lives of those impacted by sexual abuse and assault and to prevent sexual violence in our community. As you may know, all of MOCSA's services are completely free of charge. Today's event raises awareness for our mission and important funding so that MOCSA can continue to deliver our programming at no cost. All of this is possible because of the pledge of support from our sponsors and donors today. We are so very grateful for your generosity.
The pandemic has been challenging for so many of us, and it's impacted MOCSA's clients directly. Job loss, fear for their housing and basic needs, and heightened fear for their personal safety and well-being. The pandemic has created the perfect storm for sexual violence and its aftermath. Many victims are isolated at home with their abusers. They may feel concerned about going to hospitals for exams, can't access services as easily, or are unable to leave an unsafe home. Today, the stress is greater, the mental health needs more complex, and recovery can feel even more difficult. Providing services for victims of sexual assault and abuse in their darkest moments is more important than ever before. Because of donors and sponsors like you, MOCSA is rising to this challenge. We have already become a greater resource for mental health, a greater resource for crisis intervention, and a greater resource for emergency assistance in these times of uncertainty and hardship.
And the strength of survivors cannot be overstated. Victims are resilient, determined to heal after the trauma of crimes committed against them. At MOCSA, we follow a victim-centered, victim-led approach to services that empowers and honors the decisions of our clients. Victims are the expert of their own lives. Honoring their wishes is an important step to reclaiming the choices once taken away from them. Sexual violence rarely occurs in a vacuum. Survivors often battle histories of abuse, neglect, poverty, physical ailments, or mental health struggles. They may experience a lack of support or understanding from family or friends, making that healing even more difficult. While recovering from an assault, they often have to juggle barriers like housing, childcare, and transportation. Through all of this, victims of sexual violence show incredible strength and commitment to healing for themselves, for their children, for their families, and their loved ones. And MOCSA is here, right beside them, supporting them through each fight, each struggle, as they find themselves again after that trauma.
For those of you who are tuning in today as someone's guest or as someone who doesn't know MOCSA, first, welcome. We're glad you're here. I hope you will be inspired by what you hear in the next hour and choose to become a supporter. Choose to step up and support MOCSA and the survivors we stand with. We invite you to visit mocsA.org or text MOCSA to 76278 to make your gift today. We've already raised $380,000 for MOCSA through this luncheon, and we need your help to reach our $400,000 goal. Your gift can get us there. It's up to all of us to meet the challenge, and I know we can do it. Now, we want to take a moment to thank the dedicated leaders of today's luncheon. First, our honorary chairs, Kate and John Mitchell. Kate is a board member and a terrific friend of MOCSA. This luncheon has received incredible support this year because of the leadership of Kate and John. Thank you both. And our event underwriters, Jennifer and Chuck Lau. Jennifer, a former longtime MOCSA board member, and Chuck have been underwriters of this luncheon for several years. We appreciate your continued commitment to MOCSA and thank you for your generous support of survivors.
We'd also like to thank the devoted team that's worked hard to put this event together today. Our event co-chairs, Polly Kramer and Nola Adebo. Our community support co-chairs, Katie and Jared Campbell and Janae and JP Roberts. The volunteer members of the community support and event planning committees and the Johnson County Advisory Council. Signal Theory, who once again developed the powerful marketing campaign for today's luncheon. MOCSA's Board of Directors for their support of not only this event, but their year-round support and commitment to ensuring that MOCSA has the resources necessary to achieve our mission and to support survivors. And finally, to the development team at MOCSA. Sandra Williams, Josh King, Amanda Crane, Debbie Fredrickson, Kate Schwaller, and our Vice President of Development, Cassie Sands. These supporters contributed hundreds of hours to make this a successful event, and we appreciate their dedication. Thank you all. So now, let's get on with the program.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today, though I'm sorry we can't be together in person. Kate and I are raving fans of MOCSA and thrilled to serve as honorary chairs for this year's community luncheon. We appreciate that so many of you have joined us today to recognize the essential work that MOCSA is accomplishing in our communities. With Kate's service on the MOCSA board for 6 years now, we have learned about the devastating and enduring effects resulting from sexual assault. And we have witnessed MOCSA's amazing response, both rapid and ongoing, to help victims cope and move forward with their lives. MOCSA is undoubtedly worthy of all of our support.
As longtime friends and donors, we are proud to partner with MOCSA in their efforts to provide hope and healing for survivors of sexual abuse and assault, and to support MOCSA's mission of countering sexual violence through prevention and education. Each year, MOCSA provides crisis line, counseling, and advocacy services for thousands of survivors and their loved ones around the Kansas City area. In 2021 alone, MOCSA staff and volunteers have gone to area hospitals 144 times to support a victim of sexual assault during their forensic exam. MOCSA becomes a lifeline for survivors during that initial hospital visit, offering personal and legal advocacy, counseling, and ongoing support through all the trauma and challenges that can take over a survivor's life after an assault. With your donation made today to the community luncheon, MOCSA's expert staff can continue to provide these services completely free of charge, because no survivor should have to pay more than they already have.
While MOCSA will always remain committed to providing their core victim support services, they are also committed to work to prevent sexual assault. Last year, MOCSA reached more than 30,000 people through education and outreach, even during COVID. MOCSA's message is clear: sexual violence is never okay. It is never the victim's fault. Victims can tell someone, and there are resources available that can help them become survivors. MOCSA staff offers innovative programming, now both in person and virtually, designed to produce lasting cultural changes in our community, focusing on middle and high schools through their Green Dot and youth-led prevention programs. MOCSA educators are out in the community every single day, working with both children and adults to stop sexual violence from happening in the first place.
These outstanding programs are just one of the many ways MOCSA is working to counter sexual assault and abuse at all levels. With your help today, we can work to end sexual violence and better support survivors together. John and I sincerely appreciate you joining us from wherever you are today, and we hope you will continue to support the vital work that MOCSA does for the Kansas City community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate and John, for your generous support of MOCSA, and we're raving fans of both of you. We can't thank you enough for your partnership and commitment to survivors and our mission.
Now, we'd like to share an exciting announcement from a special guest.
As Chairman and CEO of the Chiefs, I'm honored to share that MOCSA has been selected as the recipient of this year's Chiefs Charity Game. MOCSA is the only rape crisis center in the greater Kansas City metropolitan area, serving more than 30,000 adults, children, and families each year through their programs. Our family has been a proud supporter of MOCSA for several years, and we believe the Chiefs Charity Game will help MOCSA expand their education and prevention programs into more schools, making Kansas City a safer place for everyone. So we invite you to join us for our first preseason game and cheer on the Chiefs and support the outstanding work MOCSA does in our community.
We hope you're ready to tailgate with MOCSA because we're thrilled to be the recipient of the Chiefs Charity Game for 2021. We've had a great partnership with the Chiefs and the Hunt family over the last few years. And with the funds and awareness raised through the Chiefs Charity Game together over the next 3 years, we will be able to expand our education and prevention services for schools in the Kansas City area.
Our work to prevent sexual violence through impactful programming helps students become leaders and schools become safer and more welcoming spaces. We are thankful for the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes' presence today at our community luncheon as they've continued to help us amplify our message that together we can create a community free from sexual violence. Julie, Patrick, imagine if all the decibels of Arrowhead Stadium were united in demanding an end to the sexual violence in our city. That would be a real victory. Keep an eye out for more details and a date for the game coming soon. Get ready for August, put on your red and gold, and cheer on the Kansas City Chiefs and MOCSA.
And now, Josh, Patrick, and I are thrilled to introduce you to our keynote speaker this afternoon, Trish Mitchell. A Kansas City native, Trish is a published author and successful entrepreneur, as well as a MOCSA board member and longtime Speakers Bureau volunteer. In 2013, she wrote and published her autobiography, Testify. Testify is an inspirational nonfiction book sharing her life experiences from the age of 8 through young adulthood. Testify has gained national attention from several motion picture developers, and Trish signed a movie deal for an adapted film in 2018 and wrote the feature-length screenplay Testify the movie. Trish also owns and operates a youth activewear line called Go Baby Go, launched Ish Eyewear in 2020, and her most recent endeavor is a new publication titled All Black Everything Magazine. This magazine focuses on highlighting struggling Black-owned businesses, along with artists and other creatives on subjects like medical care, finances, law enforcement, frontline workers, and those doing amazing things in Black communities. A graduate of Paseo High School in Kansas City, Trish furthered her education at Penn Valley Community College, where she studied public relations and criminal law. Trish is the proud mother of 3 adult sons, 1 adult daughter, and 3 beautiful granddaughters. Please join us today in welcoming Trish Mitchell.
Good afternoon. I am truly honored to have the opportunity to share my survival story with each of you today, though I wish we could be together in person. I'd like to take a moment to share a little about myself. I was born and raised right here in the Midwest. I grew up in a home with my mother, my father, and my 2 sisters. My sisters and I didn't know that we were growing up in a dysfunctional family. We were protected behind the walls in our bedrooms, but on the other side of those walls echoed the sounds of shoved furniture and my mother's labored breathing, exhausted from running and fighting and crying until her tears ran dry. My sisters and I were protected by the trees outside, trees smeared with my mother's skin and blood after my father took her out of the house for her nightly beating. We were protected by the prayers of our mother, whose lips were too swollen to part the word amen the next day at church on Sunday. These were the stories my mother only shared later with us kids when we were no longer kids. We grew up in a home where domestic violence seemed normal. When our walls could no longer sustain the volume of my parents shouting and the hardwood floors began to buckle, saturated with my mother's tears, when the violence spilled out over the rooftop and seeped through every crevice of the house, after years and months of violence and pain, my father suddenly left. Stillness and quiet was foreign around our house. Things didn't seem normal when the furniture remained stationary for more than a day, and rest finally meant sleeping with both eyes closed. My mother didn't seem at all disturbed by the absence of my father. She seemed relieved to know that she had fought her last fight and peace was in her future. She seemed to gain strength from adversity. She could finally breathe and stop fighting. After my father left, so did any obligation he felt to support his family financially. Even so, my sisters and I never knew hunger nor lacked what we needed. The survival instinct that radiated from my mother's presence was evident now more than ever. Hunger and darkness, nakedness and cold, homelessness and fear. These were situations I would never encounter. My mother said so, and she made it so. While my mother made sure we were safe and cared for, things were far from perfect. Growing up, like in many families, there were painful labels and comparisons made, particularly negative comparisons between my sister and I. She was the pretty one, I was the ugly one. She had the good hair, I had the nappy hair. They said she was beautiful, but I was smart. My skin color was my disease. I heard this so much that I actually started to believe it. I knew there were differences between my sister and I, but the more they were pointed out, the smaller the box that held my self-esteem became. They called me the ugly duckling. My other nickname was Patches because my hair was so unmanageable and kinky that I had patches of hair missing from my head. I often heard that men would not want to marry dark-skinned Black women. That meant their children would be dark. Men did not want to marry women with nappy hair. That meant their children would have nappy hair. For me, that meant I could look forward to a lifelong career as a babysitter, not a wife and mother. I heard this so often that it became my way of thinking. I knew that being Black was a strike against me and being female was another. So I was born with 2 strikes against me, attributes I possessed but could not control or change. I knew I wanted to do some good in the world, but I didn't know if these labels would always hold me back. As I grew into a young woman, it felt like everything I was taught about being inferior was proven to be true. I met my first boyfriend at age 17. We worked together at the same restaurant while I was in high school. He was kind and caring and thoughtful in the beginning. He wooed me, and we got married soon after we started dating when I was just 18 years old. We were happy now and then, but I quickly learned that I had married the same anger and abuse that was so familiar to me and that I had witnessed daily with my father. My ex-husband would often stand over me like a warrior after my eyes and mouth were beaten shut. He delivered a blow to the skull, and he loved me more after that. At times, he would apologize and beg me not to leave him. I couldn't make sense of why he was so angry all the time, but I knew I couldn't stay. Each time I came close to leaving, his anger would flare up again. He even threatened to kill me. He forced me to have sex with him when I didn't want to. We call that spousal rape now, but I didn't think of it that way then. Something had to change. Like when I was younger, something drastic had to happen as my world was continuously falling apart. I thought that it would get better after the birth of our first child, and for a time it did. My husband joined the military, so I left the rest of my family behind and moved out of state to the military base where he was stationed. This move rendered me defenseless against him. I didn't know anyone. He was a police officer in the armed forces, so any cry that I made for help was intercepted by his officer friends. Some beatings I accepted, and some I fought back. Fights were initiated by him for any number of reasons. Dinner was not hot enough. The dishes were not clean enough. It took little or no effort to set him off. He would never be satisfied or violent enough to calm the monster inside of him. I needed to get out, but I had no idea how. Then it happened. During an argument over dinner, he tossed a large glass baking dish at my head. I lowered my body to avoid the blow, and the pan shattered against the wall behind me. This would have been just another injury that I had escaped, and nothing new if the fight had ended there. But I was holding our 8-month-old son in my arms during the attack. This was the event that triggered my escape. I made the decision to live and save the life of my precious sons. I decided, come hell or high water, I was leaving. My plan of escape was all sorted out in my mind. I had been thinking of it for months. It was ready to be executed. It would be all or nothing because my child meant more to me than my own life. I gathered anything of value when he was away at work and purchased a bus ticket back to my hometown, back to my mother. I packed bags for my son and I and ran. Once on the bus, I couldn't breathe. I feared that my husband would meet me at the first rest stop. I feared he would keep his promise to kill me if I ever left him. I feared he would bring me back to the life of hell we shared. After that first rest stop, I feared he would meet me at the next rest stop or back in my hometown. Fear, it was the only emotion I had come to know so well. I was suddenly free from the cycle of violence I had been stuck in since my childhood, but it took time to feel that freedom instead of fear. It was 1990 when I left him. This was shortly after I learned that I was pregnant with his second child. I had to get my life together on my own. We lived with my mother until I secured a job, moved into a 1-bedroom duplex, and settled into a new and quiet life with my 2 beautiful sons. A year later, we officially divorced. While I continued to relive the hurt and pain he caused in my life, I wanted to move forward. As time went on, I wanted to stop thinking of myself as an abused wife and a victim of domestic violence. I wanted to enjoy being an adult woman in my 20s. My boys would often spend weekends with their grandmother, while I attended parties, drank alcohol, and met a lot of men. The door had been opened to a world of men who actually wanted me, and the alcohol gave me the courage to face them with confidence. I had endured a lot in my life, and I felt the world owed me something, like I had really missed out on living. My life at this point was all about filling a void. Filling that void inside myself, numbing my pain and my fear, and trying to prove everybody wrong. Men wanting me would prove that my nappy hair no longer existed. It would prove that my dark skin was desirable and worthy of passion. I had to prove everybody wrong. More than that, I had to prove myself wrong, my own doubts and my own fears within myself. Men became only pieces of an incomplete puzzle that I was trying to put together for myself. Over time, I found I could only give myself to them without being fully present, without mind or spirit connected. And doing that required a certain numbness. I had to be an empty shell, hollow to the core. Since I couldn't scoop out my heart and nerves and still function, I had to find that numbness artificially. So I turned to drugs and alcohol. I craved the numbness and confidence it gave me, so drinking and using became a daily occurrence. With each use, my senses were dulled more and more. The drugs numbed me. They gave me the hollow core I was looking for. My young adult life became a series of parties, drugs, and men. By this time, I had somehow mastered the skill of gliding through life on autopilot. I worked. I even found a successful career and cared for my boys, all while wearing a mask. I was not the young lady I pretended to be. I was a functioning drug addict and alcoholic. One afternoon, I met a man at my apartment complex who was helping my new neighbors move in. We struck up a conversation, and he told me I was pretty. That feeling was foreign to me. I never believed I was pretty and was never made to feel that way. It made me feel euphoric. He asked me out on a date, and I agreed. I invited him to my apartment for drinks later that week. When he arrived, I could tell something was different from our first encounter. Something in his eyes looked different. I invited him in, but he never spoke to me at all. When I offered him a drink, he simply nodded his head, but something felt off. I got up to grab 2 beers from the kitchen, and just as I shut the refrigerator door, I turned and noticed him standing right behind me. He knocked the drinks from my hands, threw me to the floor, and proceeded to rape me, all without saying a word. I was deeply traumatized and depressed afterward. I shut everyone out, started missing work, stopped eating, and cried constantly. I didn't have the necessary coping skills or support to deal with what had happened to me. There was no drug imaginable that could take away the feeling of this deep invasion. My life spiraled badly. For nearly 3 years, I continued on this self-destructive course. I functioned only on the fumes of my past and the sporadic laughter of my children. I continued working my job as a retail clothing store manager. I survived by putting on my artificial joy every morning before heading out to work. We celebrated Thanksgiving, Christmas, and birthdays as most families, but for me, it was all an act. I never enjoyed anything. I was no longer dating men and had disappeared from the party scene. If I was smiling on the outside, I was crying on the inside. There was no truth in my life. Everything was a lie and everything was in vain. I felt I didn't deserve honesty and truth. I didn't deserve love and happiness, and prosperity and joy was for everyone else, and that feeling of passion and love that I so desired would never find me. I recognized I was officially hitting rock bottom. And in the middle of all of this, my 5-year-old son was diagnosed with cancer. The doctor told me he had a rapidly growing melanoma and likely wouldn't survive. After a second and even a third opinion, I had to face it and stop pretending it wasn't true. The doctor came up with a treatment plan and we moved ahead. I couldn't help but feel like this was my punishment for all of my self-destructive choices. I blamed myself for every bad thing that happened. I prayed constantly until the day of my son's surgery. As the doctors wheeled him into surgery, I prayed one last time. And this time I told God if he would spare the life of my son, that I would serve him for the rest of my life, and I would tell the world that he healed my son of cancer. I made a commitment to God that day that I would use my story to help others if he healed my son. And he did. He healed my son. My son is currently 31 years old and remains cancer-free. His diagnosis, while devastating, was that turning point that I needed in my life. I put down the drugs, stopped drinking, and ended all association with my party friends. I began to surround myself with more positive, successful people, people who were living the life I wanted for myself and my children. I found myself thinking positively and speaking positively. I used those people as mentors to elevate my life in ways that would not only benefit my family, but also set the example for them to do the same. I had lived a life pretending for so long that my transition from a life filled with drugs and self-destructive behaviors didn't happen overnight. My family didn't know of this secret lifestyle, and those that knew were in the exact same pain as I was. I only had my faith and determination to make the necessary changes for a better life for my children and for myself. It took a lot of time, a lot of strength, and a lot of prayer to pull my life out of the ditch. As a part of my healing in 2016, I learned of the life-changing work that the MOCSA organization does in our community. I immediately knew I had to join forces with MOCSA. As a volunteer, I serve on the MOCSA Speakers Bureau, which has proven how powerful storytelling can be. I use my story, like today's speech, in my own healing process by connecting with others and helping them understand how sexual assault can impact a survivor's life. I also served as a hospital advocate where I was able to comfort and hold the hand of many survivors through the forensic exam process. I now serve on the board of directors. I didn't know about MOCSA when I was sexually assaulted. If I had known of their free services and resources, it would have changed the way I dealt with being raped. Their support would have helped me in so many ways. MOCSA makes sure there is someone there to answer the crisis line 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They ensure survivors aren't alone at the hospital or during a court appearance. MOCSA assures that young people throughout our community learn about consent and what a healthy relationship looks like. If I had known what a healthy relationship looked like, it would have changed the trajectory of my life. I wish this were the end of my speech, but it's not yet. Even though I had done so much hard personal work to heal and was in a better place emotionally, shortly after connecting with MOCSA, a man that I knew and trusted attempted to rape me in my own home. I was able to fight off my attacker, but I was now not only a MOCSA volunteer, I was in need of MOCSA services myself. The attempted rape triggered me and brought up all of my old pain and trauma. MOCSA saw me through trauma just as they do for every survivor in our city who turns to them for healing and support. They allowed me to speak while they just listened. They validated my own fears and concerns. More than anything, they provided resources that assured my family and I would be safe while I continued along with my recovery. Through the trauma and trials of my life, I come to you today as a mom of 4 adult children and a grandmother of 3 beautiful granddaughters. I'm a successful motivational speaker, an author of 5 children's books, a playwright and screenwriter, the editor-in-chief of my own magazine, and owner of 2 other businesses that makes me an official serial entrepreneur. In 2013, I wrote and published my autobiography, Testify, which allowed me to get the pains of my past out of my head and onto paper. The writing of my story was so cathartic, it helped me to get over the hurdle of pain and shame I had carried for so many years. I recently met with independent film producers to discuss the next steps to making my autobiography into a feature-length film. Making that happen was a long series of events. After the autobiography was published, I knew I wanted to reach a larger audience. I decided to submit the synopsis for my story to multiple film producers through a website called Inktip. It was months later that I received a response from Lionsgate. They were interested in an option to purchase my story with the intention of making it into a motion picture. They requested a script, but I didn't have one. I took to the internet to research screenwriting and the necessary software to create a professional script. I located a free software for beginners and took an entire year to write my very first adapted nonfiction film. After multiple edits requested by Lionsgate, they set up a meeting with me at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2018. Shortly thereafter, I received the contract for a 24-month option to purchase. Nearly 18 months later, COVID hit the film and theater industry hard, and all movie production was placed on hold. My contract was set to expire in July 2020, so I needed to make the decision to sign for another 24 months or move forward with another film company. So in March 2021, I talked with Indie Film Productions, and they agreed to set the wheels in motion to obtain filming locations, funding, and all of the necessary steps to film my movie right here in Kansas City. I will now be able to share my survival story on a national scale. Hopefully, you'll be able to see my story on the big screen sometime soon, maybe even right here at the Kansas City Film Festival. And finally, I am an advocate for community volunteerism and for the MOCSA organization. One of my most memorable advocacy stories comes to mind. I went to one of my assigned hospitals to support a survivor who was brought in after being sexually assaulted. During the forensic exam, we shared stories from our childhood and talked about the names and ages of our children. There came a moment in our discussion that I shared my survivor story with her. It was in that moment we were the same. We connected on a level that allowed us to be vulnerable in the presence of one another. She supported me and I supported her. When the exam was done, she went to the restroom to freshen up and change into the clothes MOCSA had provided. When she came out of the restroom, she gave me a hug. She gave me the longest, warmest hug I'd ever had. I knew from that point she would be in the very capable hands of MOCSA and the resources they provide. But I also knew that I would never see her again. These are the life-changing bonds created by volunteers and the staff of the MOCSA organization. Sadly, my story of trauma and sexual violence isn't unique. Thousands of people in Kansas City need MOCSA's help each year. Sexual assault affects real people and changes the course of real lives. The pain of our past doesn't define us, and with the help of MOCSA, survivors just like me can begin the journey of creating a new path ahead. MOCSA continues to work to change our culture from one that expects and accepts sexual violence to one that believes and supports survivors, educates our children on how to stand up for themselves and their classmates, and helps change our community for the better. This kind of change requires all of us, because one person can't do everything, but every person can do something. These are moments throughout our lives where we can do something to take action. Moments where we can contribute purposeful things, not for ourselves, but for someone else. Maybe we should stop telling people to find their purpose and start teaching them to be intentional about making a difference. MOCSA takes action every day to end sexual violence. Decide what action you can take to help today. Think about making a donation to MOCSA right now. Sign up to become a volunteer. Learn how to talk to your children about healthy relationships. Find out what to say if a survivor shares their story with you. Let's work together, because to end sexual violence is going to take all of us. Thank you for listening.
Trish, thank you so much for the courage and bravery to come and share your personal story today. I am honored that you would do that. I am so grateful for your leadership and advocacy in this movement, and for being the voice of so many who have had theirs taken away. So I appreciate that. And on a happier note, we can't wait to host a MOCSA viewing party when the movie is released. So we're excited to see that.
And thank you, Trish. As a chair of the board of MOCSA, I am so grateful that I have the honor of serving with Trish. She joined the board this year, and while I know her in a professional capacity, I am blown away by her courage and vulnerability and strength here today. It's not easy to stand in front of thousands of people, even on a camera, and share such personal experiences. But as you said in your speech, your story has power, and sharing it has helped you to heal, and today it has reached so many others. Today you've connected with survivors who may be looking for help, with families whose child just disclosed that they are a victim of sexual abuse, or with those learning how sexual violence has impacted our neighbor, friend, or coworker. And Trish's story has even more power today. Your story can motivate us all to find a way to take action. It can motivate us to get in this fight, the fight to end sexual violence and help survivors find their voices. The fight for survivors is a fight for justice. It is a fight that all of us take on if we care about our city and about our families, because for too long, sexual violence has been used as a weapon of coercion and control, stealing and silencing victims' voices, stealing their lives, stealing their independence, stealing the very right they have to exist and express themselves. Today, we are filming this live. Today, I want to tell you that in the 5,000 crisis line calls that MOCSA receives each year, we have already received 3 calls today. There will be probably 11 more calls today. Those are voices calling us, calling you to listen and to engage in a fight for justice. MOCSA doesn't sit on the sidelines while others fight against sexual violence. MOCSA is here today, out there in the neighborhood every day, taking action for justice. And we need you. With your donation today, you can fight to end sexual violence, to end coercion, to end the systematic oppression of people who are made vulnerable and weak because of the actions of others. Our education and prevention programs at MOCSA are built to end sexual violence, to prevent it in our community. Your gift right now
for those 3 crisis line calls we've received, for the 11 more we'll receive throughout the day, and for the 5,000 crisis line calls MOCSA receives every year in this city alone, that gift ensures all of MOCSA's services to continue to be free of charge. So no survivor has to pay more than they already have. No survivor should have to pay for justice. That is our job, to create justice. With your donation, you're helping survivors advocate and fight for the justice and support they deserve. Fighting against the trauma that has caused such pain and damage in our victims' lives. MOCSA is fighting for you and for our community. So join us in this fight right now. Make a donation today, here. Help us reach our goal. Visit MOCSA.org or text MOCSA to 76278. We've already raised $380,000 towards our goal of $400,000. That is too low, actually. That goal is too low. We've got to raise more than that, and your gift can get us there and beyond. Help survivors like Trish to be heard in our communities. Help survivors find their voices again. Take action with us to make Kansas City, our schools, communities, and our neighborhoods safer and healthier places for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're so grateful for your support of so many generous friends in Kansas City. We can't wait to be in person with you for the 2020 Community Luncheon. Goodbye and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Kansas City needs MOCSA because every 73 seconds, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted.
Because 500 survivors will go to the emergency room for a forensic exam this year, and someone from MOCSA will be there to hold their hand.
Because 1 out of 6 girls will be sexually abused before the age 18.
Because kids in local schools need to learn about healthy relationships and consent.
Because every day, 15 people will call MOCSA's crisis line for support, information, or to have a comforting ear. And 24 hours a day, we're there to answer.
Because survivors deserve justice and perpetrators need to be held accountable. MOCSA is here to advocate for survivors. Kansas City needs MOCSA, and MOCSA needs you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.